Rail sliding is the iconic form of movement in white noise. For the rail sliding prototype, we wanted to merge some free-form movement along with an arcade level of control for more choreographed moments. Time was limited for the initial prototype in order for us to be able to start designing levels. Once we started that process, we could find the extra features we'd need to complete this fun way for players to explore our environments. The first things I needed to figure out were getting on the rail from any point, moving along that rail, and actually getting off. Attaching to the rail requires detecting it and finding where the player is along it. The detection box checks for if you're already grinding, if it's even a rail, and setting it to be your current rail. The next step after that is disabling gravity so we don't always look like we're trying to fall through it. Finding the player's position along the rail involves looking for the location of all points in world, and which are the two closest to the player. We then find the average distance from both, and set the location along the spline. In play, this looks like this. The player hits the rail, we find the two closest points, average that distance, and set the player. Before we move along the rail, we need to know which direction we're going in. I used a dot product to determine the alignment of the camera compared to the rotation of the rail. Once we know the direction, we can go either positively or negatively along the rail. With a speed variable, we can change the speed via player control or world control in order to secretly choreograph more intense or calm moments. Rotating the player proved to be a slight challenge to get right. Around corners leaning into the curve had the player at the wrong center point. So I added an offset to the character mesh linked to its Y rotation, effectively shifting the point of rotation. This allowed me to choreograph moments where the player leans into a turn for a sense of speed and power. Finally, to get off the rail, it had to be able to sense the end of a spline or exit by player control. Once the distance along the spline equals its max or min length, we eject, launching off. Or, if the player inputs to jump off, then I launch them off in the direction of their camera, giving players a way to guide their transition from rail to rail. Finally, once off the rail, I reset the camera and orientation of the player to face the direction they're launched off. As we developed the game, there were other controls we realized were needed. The ability to turn around, get up from below, and switching from rail to rail in a controlled fashion. The turn that I wanted to make was one where the character grabs the rail, stretches out, and then whips back in a satisfying fashion. I used a dot product to determine the camera's angle, then either hit forward or backwards to turn. I start moving the other way halfway through the animation, making it feel very responsive and powerful. This gives a sense of skill to everything as simple as just turning around. Getting up to the rail from below uses the same code as getting on normally, but there's another detection box above the player's head. I had a hang grind system in place for a while. However, we realized this added a layer of complication for players. It wasn't more fun, and it caused many issues. We wanted to be able to choreograph these almost mini rhythm game aspects in white noise. However, jumping from rail to rail was clunky, hard, and not fun. So, I developed a rail switch, using two detection boxes to determine if a rail is next to you. Then, when a player would input right or left, and there is a rail next to you, you would get moved across automatically and set it as your current rail. This was all the logic that drives white noise's rail sliding mechanic. I hope you enjoyed.